I'm Olivia Richardson, 35, and 3 years ago my family abandoned me when I lost my job. Last Sunday, I was enjoying coffee in the house I purchased alone when the doorbell rang. There stood my entire estranged family with luggage. After 3 years of silence, my brother Michael surveyed my home and said, "You don't even have a family to worry about. We'll take the house." What I did next taught them that the girl they abandoned was gone forever. Before I dive into this wild journey, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to family members who took you for granted. And stick around to see exactly how I handled these entitled relatives who thought they could walk back into my life and claim what I built from nothing. 3 years ago, my life looked completely different. I had been working at Market Trend Agency for 5 years, pouring my heart and soul into building my career as a marketing specialist. I had a decent apartment, a reliable car, and what I thought was a supportive family. I wasn't wealthy by any means, but I was proud of the stability I had created for myself. Then the recession hit. I remember sitting in that conference room with 75% of my colleagues as our CEO announced the massive layoffs. The severance package was minimal, just 2 weeks' pay. I wasn't too worried initially. I had 3 months of savings and was confident I'd find something quickly. I was wrong. The entire industry was downsizing, and suddenly thousands of marketing professionals were competing for the same few positions. As my savings dwindled and rent came due, I realized I needed help. Just temporary assistance to keep me afloat while I continued my job search. That's when I learned who my family really was. My father, Richard, was the first person I called. We had always had a somewhat distant relationship, but he was financially stable, and I thought he might offer some fatherly support. "Dad, I hate to ask this, but I'm in a tight spot financially after the layoff. Could I possibly borrow just enough to cover next month's rent while I—" "You should have saved better," he interrupted, his voice cold. "Your generation always expects handouts." Then he hung up. My mother Diana wasn't any better. "Oh, sweetie, you're in our thoughts and prayers," she said, in that sugary voice that never matched her actions. "But we just can't right now. Have you tried cutting back on those fancy coffee drinks?" My brother Michael, who I'd helped move 3 times and even loaned money to when he was between jobs, delivered the final blow. "Maybe if you hadn't wasted money on that fancy apartment and designer clothes, you'd have something to fall back on," he said. "Some of us have to be responsible adults." Desperate, I swallowed my pride and asked if we could have dinner at my parents' house to discuss options. That evening became one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. As I explained my situation around their dining table, my sister-in-law Rebecca rolled her eyes. "This is exactly what happens to irresponsible millennials who don't plan ahead," she said, despite being only 2 years older than me. My father checked his watch repeatedly, making it clear my problems were inconveniencing him. My mother suggested that perhaps it was time I found a husband to solve my financial issues. But it was my brother Michael who delivered the line that broke me. "We have real responsibilities, real families to take care of. You only have yourself to worry about." I drove home in tears that night, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The next morning, I received a text from Michael. "Don't contact us until you've got your life together. We can't keep bailing you out." They had never bailed me out once in my entire adult life. As the weeks passed, I sold everything I could, my television, my jewelry, even my grandmother's silverware. But it wasn't enough. 30 days later, I found the eviction notice taped to my door, the official letterhead and bold "Notice to vacate," making my stomach drop to my feet. The economic recession that forced Market Trend Agency to cut 75% of its staff hit me like a truck. I'd never imagined I would be among those walking out with a cardboard box of desk plants and family photos. The severance package barely covered 2 weeks of expenses, and the 3 months of savings I had meticulously built up disappeared alarmingly fast. Rent, $1,350. Car payment, $280. Insurance, $210. Student loans, $375. Groceries, utilities, phone bill. The expenses seemed endless. Each morning, I woke up to check my dwindling bank account, the numbers dropping like a countdown to disaster. By the third month of unemployment, I was desperate. That's when I started making those calls to family members, calls that would forever change how I viewed the concept of family itself. My father, Richard, had always been financially conservative, but I thought surely he would help his daughter in a genuine crisis. When I called him, I could hear golf commentary in the background. His attention was clearly divided. "Dad, I hate to ask this, but I'm in a tight spot financially after the layoff. Could I possibly borrow just enough to cover next month's rent while I—" "You should have saved better," he interrupted, his voice cold and dismissive. "Your generation always expects handouts. When I was your age, I worked 3 jobs and never asked my parents for a dime." Then came the dial tone. He had hung up on me mid-crisis. My mother, Diana, answered with her usual saccharine sweetness, but that quickly faded when she realized I was asking for financial help. "Oh, sweetie, you're in our thoughts and prayers," she said, her voice shifting to that particular tone she used when she wanted to appear supportive without actually doing anything. "But we just renovated the kitchen, and your father's golf membership just increased its fees. Have you tried cutting back on those fancy coffee drinks and avocado toast?" I hadn't bought a coffee shop drink in weeks. I was making instant coffee at home and eating ramen noodles to stretch my dollars. My brother Michael had been in similar situations before. 3 years ago, when he was between jobs, I had loaned him $2,000 to cover his rent and car payment. He had never fully paid me back, always having some excuse about unexpected expenses with the kids. I thought surely he would remember that and return the favor. "Maybe if you hadn't wasted money on that fancy apartment and designer clothes, you'd have something to fall back on," he said, conveniently forgetting that my apartment was modest and my wardrobe came mostly from discount stores. "Some of us have to be responsible adults. I have kids to feed, Olivia." Desperate and increasingly panicked as my final dollars drained away, I swallowed my pride and asked if we could have dinner at my parents' house to discuss options. Perhaps in person, seeing my evident distress, they would find some compassion. That evening became etched in my memory as one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. My mother had prepared her usual pot roast, acting as if this were just a normal family dinner. My father poured himself a generous whiskey, but offered me only water. Michael and his wife Rebecca arrived late, their 2 children immediately running to the playroom in the basement. As we sat around the dining table, I carefully explained my situation, the massive industry layoffs, my aggressive job search with no results, the impending eviction if I couldn't make rent. "I'm not asking for a handout," I said, my voice steady despite my churning stomach. "Just a loan to keep me afloat for another month or 2 until I can secure a position. I'll pay every cent back with interest." As I spoke, my sister-in-law Rebecca rolled her eyes dramatically. "This is exactly what happens to irresponsible millennials who don't plan ahead," she said, despite being only 2 years older than me. "Michael and I always keep 6 months of expenses saved, even with the kids." I bit my tongue, knowing that Michael's parents had given them the down payment for their house as a wedding gift, an advantage I never received. My father checked his watch repeatedly during my explanation, making it clear my problems were inconveniencing his evening routine. "The job market is tough right now," he said, not meeting my eyes. "But everyone goes through hard times. It builds character." My mother reached across to pat my hand, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. "Perhaps it's time you considered finding a husband, dear. A woman your age should have that security. What about that nice accountant from your old company? Is he single?" But it was my brother Michael who delivered the line that broke me. After I mentioned that I was considering moving to a cheaper city if necessary, he scoffed. "We have real responsibilities, real families to take care of," he said, emphasizing the word real, as if my life were somehow fictional. "You only have yourself to worry about. No kids, no husband. You should be thanking your stars you're not in our position. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I don't remember what I said or if I even finished my food. I do remember driving home in tears, my hands shaking so badly on the steering wheel that I had to pull over twice to compose myself. The next morning, I received a text from Michael that would be the final communication from my family for a very long time. Don't contact us until you've got your life together. We can't keep bailing you out. It's embarrassing for everyone. They had never bailed me out once in my entire adult life. Not once. As the final days in my apartment ticked by, I sold everything I could possibly part with: my television, my jewelry, even the silverware my grandmother had left me. I held garage sales on weekends and listed items on every online marketplace. But it wasn't enough. Between my dwindling resources and the complete absence of family support, I couldn't gather enough for another month's rent. 30 days after that disastrous family dinner, I found the eviction notice taped to my door, the official letterhead and bold "Notice to vacate," making my stomach drop to my feet. I had 72 hours to leave the place I had called home for the past 4 years. Living in your car is something you think happens to other people until suddenly it's happening to you. After the eviction, I packed what remained of my possessions into my Toyota Corolla, some clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and a few sentimental items I couldn't bear to sell. Everything else went into a small storage unit I paid for with my last credit card that wasn't maxed out. Those first 2 weeks were a crash course in survival. I parked in different Walmart lots each night, learning quickly which ones allowed overnight parking. I kept my gym membership active by scraping together the monthly fee, not for fitness, but because it gave me access to showers and a place to brush my teeth each morning. I became an expert at washing my hair in sinks and changing clothes in bathroom stalls without touching the floor. My daily routine took on a desperate precision. Wake up at 5:30 a.m. before security might knock on my window. Drive to the gym to shower and make myself presentable. Change into professional clothes I kept carefully hung in the back seat. Then to the library when it opened at 9 a.m., where I could use free Wi-Fi to send out job applications, at least 15 each day, sometimes more. I lived on protein bars, apples, and whatever else I could store without refrigeration. At night, I would recline my driver's seat as far as it would go, cover myself with the only blanket I had kept, and try to sleep despite the constant fear of someone breaking into my car, or worse, discovering I was living in it. The hardest part wasn't the physical discomfort or even the fear. It was the shame. The crushing, suffocating shame of having fallen so far, of having no safety net, of being completely alone in the world. Then came the day that changed everything. I was sitting in the library, submitting my 20th job application of the week, when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned to see Marcus Johnson, a former colleague from Market Trend's creative department. "Olivia? I thought that was you," he said, his familiar smile momentarily bringing me back to better days. "How have you been since the layoffs?" I nearly broke down right there. After weeks of putting on a brave face, of pretending to recruiters that I was calling from my home office rather than a library corner, having someone from my old life recognize me was almost too much. "I've been better," I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady. "Still looking for the right opportunity." Marcus pulled up a chair, ignoring the librarian's disapproving glance. "Listen, I've started a small marketing consultancy. It's nothing fancy yet, just me and 2 other ex-Market Trend people. We could use someone with your skills, but I have to be honest, we can't match your old salary. Not even close." I wanted to laugh. Any salary would be better than my current income of 0. "I'd love to hear more," I said, trying not to sound too desperate. "Maybe we could grab coffee?" We moved to a nearby coffee shop, where Marcus explained his fledgling business. The position he offered was part-time initially, with flexible hours and modest pay. It wouldn't cover all my expenses, but it was a lifeline, a way back into the professional world. "When can I start?" I asked, not even bothering to negotiate. With my first paycheck, I found a tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood most people would avoid after dark. The building had questionable security, occasional hot water, and neighbors who seemed to either fight or party all night. But it had walls and a roof and a door that locked, and after weeks in my car, it felt like a palace. Still, the salary from Marcus's startup wasn't enough to rebuild my life. I needed more income, so I applied for an evening position at a bar called the Rusty Nail, despite having no previous bartending experience. The owner, a gruff but fair man named Tony, took a chance on me, and I spent my evenings learning to mix drinks while chatting with customers. Between the marketing job and bartending, I was working 70 hours a week. I would wake up at 7 a.m., work at Marcus's office until 6 p.m., change clothes in the bar's bathroom, and then serve drinks until 2 a.m. I would stumble home, sleep for 4 hours, and do it all again. The physical and emotional exhaustion was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Some nights, I was so tired that I cried while walking home, simply because my body didn't know how else to process the fatigue. It was at the Rusty Nail that I met Stephanie Chin, a law student who bartended weekends to pay for books and living expenses. We bonded over our mutual exhaustion and dark humor about difficult customers. When she mentioned she was looking for a new living situation, I suggested we become roommates to split costs. A month later, we moved into a slightly better apartment with 2 tiny bedrooms instead of 1. Having a roommate eased the financial burden considerably. For the first time since losing my job, I could afford health insurance again, a basic plan, but it meant I no longer had to ignore health concerns out of fear of medical bills. Meanwhile, at Marcus's company, I was determined to prove my value. I stayed late to learn new software, volunteered for the projects no one else wanted, and brought in fresh ideas from my previous experience. Marcus noticed. 6 months after hiring me, he increased my hours and my pay. "You're the hardest worker I've ever met," he told me. "This company is growing because of people like you." During those midnight hours when I couldn't sleep despite my exhaustion, I took free online courses to expand my skills: digital analytics, social media management, content strategy. I became certified in platforms I had only peripheral knowledge of before. I was rebuilding myself, skill by skill, dollar by dollar. The most unexpected moment came when I realized I had gone an entire day without thinking about my family's betrayal. It wasn't forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but it was a small freedom, a sign that their abandonment no longer defined every moment of my existence. One night, after a particularly grueling shift at the bar, I crawled into bed without my usual routine of checking my meager savings account and calculating how many months until I might feel secure again. I simply fell asleep, and for the first time in nearly a year, I didn't cry myself to sleep thinking about family betrayal. It was a small victory, but in that moment, it felt enormous. The 1-year anniversary of my family's abandonment arrived on a Tuesday. I didn't mark the occasion with any special recognition. I was too busy preparing a presentation for a potential new client at Marcus's company, now officially named Horizon Marketing Solutions. But I did allow myself a moment of reflection during my morning coffee. 1 year ago, I had been sleeping in my car. Today, I was the newly promoted team lead for client acquisitions at a growing marketing firm. It wasn't where I had expected to be at this point in my life, but considering the journey, it felt like a miracle. The promotion had come with a meaningful salary increase. Not quite what I had earned at Market Trend, but enough that I could finally quit my bartending job. Stephanie was disappointed to lose her favorite coworker, but thrilled that I could finally get more than 5 hours of sleep per night. "You deserve this," she said, pouring celebratory wine into the mismatched glasses in our apartment. "No one has worked harder." With my increased income, Stephanie and I were able to move again, this time to a clean, safe apartment building with functioning appliances and neighbors who didn't have screaming matches at 3 a.m. Having my evenings free also meant I could focus on professional development in a more structured way. I enrolled in night classes at the local community college to get additional certifications in digital marketing and data analytics. My personal life, however, remained mostly on hold. I had attempted a few dates, usually set up by Stephanie, but they all followed a similar pattern. I would meet someone, things would go well initially, and then the moment would come when they would ask about my family. "We're not close," I would say, the understatement of the century. They would press for details, and if I gave even a sanitized version of the truth, the mood would shift. Some would become uncomfortable, others would offer platitudes about how family is everything and how I should try to reconcile before it's too late. One date actually suggested that the abandonment must have been partially my fault. I didn't schedule a second date with any of them. Then came the industry award that changed everything. Horizon had submitted a campaign I designed for a local nonprofit to the Regional Marketing Excellence Awards. It was a low-budget campaign that had generated remarkable results, driving a 300% increase in donations through strategic social media targeting. To everyone's surprise, especially mine, it won in the category of Best Cause Marketing Campaign. The night of the award ceremony, Marcus insisted that I be the one to accept it on stage. Standing at that podium, looking out at a room full of marketing professionals, including several former Market Trend colleagues, I felt a surge of validation that nearly brought me to tears. "This award belongs to the entire Horizon team," I said into the microphone, my voice steadier than I felt. "And to everyone who believes in second chances." It was at the after-party that I met Nathan Taylor, the marketing director for a regional bank. He approached me with a genuine smile and a congratulatory handshake. "That campaign was brilliant," he said. "The authenticity really came through. How did you manage that on such a limited budget?" We ended up talking for hours, long after most attendees had left. Nathan wasn't like my previous dates. He listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in my perspective on marketing trends. When the topic of family came up, as it inevitably did, I gave my standard vague response. "Family is complicated for me," I said, bracing for the usual reaction. Nathan simply nodded. "Same here," he said. "I was raised by my grandparents after my parents decided parenting wasn't for them." Family is who shows up, not who shares your DNA. For the first time in ages, I felt understood. We exchanged numbers and thus began a slow-building relationship based on mutual respect and shared experiences. Meanwhile, Stephanie had begun to worry about my emotional well-being. "You've dealt with the practical fallout from your family situation," she said one evening. "But have you dealt with the emotional impact?" She was right. I had been so focused on survival and rebuilding my career that I hadn't processed the trauma of being abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. At her gentle insistence, I started seeing a therapist, using the mental health coverage from my new, improved health insurance. Those sessions were brutal at first. Articulating the depth of the betrayal and acknowledging the anger and grief I had suppressed made it all feel fresh again. But slowly, I began to understand that my worth wasn't tied to my family's approval. The breakthrough came during a session 6 weeks in. "Your family's inability to support you speaks to their limitations, not yours," my therapist said. "You've built a support system from scratch. That takes extraordinary strength." As the 2-year mark approached, Horizon Marketing Solutions had grown to a team of 15 people, and I had been promoted to senior management with another substantial raise. Marcus had become not just a boss, but a mentor and friend. The client list had expanded to include several major regional businesses, and we had moved to larger offices downtown. With my financial situation finally stable, I began to consider something that had seemed impossible during those dark days in my car: buying a home. The thought of having a space that was truly mine, that couldn't be taken away by an eviction notice, was powerfully appealing. The house hunting process was an emotional roller coaster. The first property I toured had serious foundation issues hidden beneath fresh paint. The second was in a neighborhood with a skyrocketing crime rate. The third was perfect, but got snapped up with a cash offer before I could even submit my bid. There were moments of disappointment so acute that I questioned whether I was ready for the step. But then I found it a modest three-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. It needed some cosmetic updates, but was structurally sound with a yard, just big enough for a garden. The moment I walked in, I could envision my future there. The mortgage approval process was nerve-wracking. Despite my improved credit score and stable income, the loan officer raised eyebrows at my recent financial history. But ultimately, the numbers spoke for themselves. I had rebuilt my financial life through sheer determination. Signing those mortgage papers alone was one of the proudest moments of my life. The notary passed me document after document, each requiring my signature to make this house officially mine. No cosigner, no family loan, no gift money for the down payment. Just me, my savings, and the career I had rebuilt from the ashes. Moving day arrived with unexpected emotional intensity. Stephanie took the day off to help, as did Nathan. Marcus showed up with 3 other colleagues and a truck he had rented himself. My chosen family carried furniture, unpacked boxes, and christened my new home with takeout pizza and cheap champagne on the living room floor. To Olivia, Nathan toasted, raising his plastic cup. Who proves that the only person you need to believe in you is yourself. 2 weeks later, I hosted a proper housewarming party. The house was far from fully furnished. I had prioritized a comfortable bed and a decent couch, with most other rooms remaining sparse, but it was mine. Friends from work, former colleagues, neighbors, and even Tony from the Rusty Nail came to celebrate. Throughout all of this, my biological family remained silent. I knew from occasional social media glimpses that they were aware of my professional success. My mother had liked a post about my industry award, but no one had reached out. And strangely, I was okay with that. The pain had dulled to a manageable ache, one that flared occasionally but no longer defined me. I had proven to myself that I could survive their abandonment. What I didn't know was that they were about to test whether I could survive their return. Sunday mornings in my new home had become a sacred ritual. I would wake naturally, without an alarm, make a pot of coffee in the kitchen. I was slowly renovating myself, and take it out to the small wooden deck overlooking my modest backyard. There, wrapped in a comfortable robe, I would read or simply watch the birds at the feeder I had installed. It was during these quiet moments that I felt most at peace, most certain that all the struggle had been worthwhile. This particular Sunday began like any other. The spring air was crisp but pleasant, my coffee was perfect, and I had just settled into my favorite deck chair with a new mystery novel when I heard it, the jarring sound of the doorbell, followed by insistent knocking. I considered ignoring it. Sunday mornings were my time, and I wasn't expecting any deliveries. But the knocking continued, more urgent now. With a sigh, I set down my book and coffee and walked through the house to the front door. When I opened it, time seemed to slow down. There, clustered on my front porch like an awkward family portrait, stood the people who had abandoned me in my darkest hour: my father Richard, mother Diana, brother Michael, his wife Rebecca, and their 2 children, Emma and Jacob, now 7 and 5. They were surrounded by suitcases and duffel bags as if prepared for an extended stay. Surprise! My mother exclaimed with excessive enthusiasm, her arms outstretched for a hug I didn't step forward to receive. "Oh my goodness, look at you. You look tired, dear. Are you getting enough sleep?" My father, already peering past me into the house, nodded curtly. "Nice neighborhood. Quiet. Good investment." Michael nudged his children forward. "Kids, say hello to your Aunt Olivia. You remember her, right?" Emma looked up with a practiced smile, while Jacob simply stared, clearly having no memory of me at all. Rebecca stood slightly behind them, her phone already out and taking photos of my front porch and the open door revealing my living room. "Such a charming little place," she said, emphasizing little in a way that made it sound like an insult. "Very cozy." I remained frozen in the doorway, my brain struggling to process this invasion. 3 years of silence broken not with a phone call or an apology, but with an unannounced visit and what appeared to be enough luggage for a small army. "Can we come in?" my mother asked, already inching forward. "It's chilly out here," and we've been driving since dawn. On autopilot, I stepped aside. They filed past me, my father immediately beginning a slow circuit of my living room, examining the crown molding and tapping on walls as if checking for structural issues. My mother made a beeline for the kitchen, commenting loudly on my interesting choice of cabinet colors. Rebecca continued photographing everything, claiming she wanted to show the family what a cute place you have. Michael's children required no invitation to make themselves at home. They ran through the house, opening doors, touching everything from my bookshelves to my laptop, their footsteps thundering up the stairs to explore the bedrooms. "Jacob, Emma, be careful up there," Rebecca called half-heartedly, making no actual move to supervise them. I followed the children upstairs, alarmed at how quickly they had disappeared into my private spaces. I found them jumping on my carefully made bed, shoes still on. "Please don't do that," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and authoritative. "That's my bed." "Mommy says this is going to be our room," Emma announced, continuing to bounce. "I get the big bed because I'm older. Jacob has to sleep on a mattress on the floor." Before I could process that statement, I heard Jacob in the spare bedroom, which I had set up as a home office. "This is gonna be my playroom," he shouted, already pulling books from the small bookshelf. I guided them both downstairs, where the adults had assembled in my living room. My mother had made herself at home on my couch, my father had helped himself to coffee from my pot, and Michael was examining the framed certificate of my marketing award on the wall. "Marketing, huh?" he said, as if we were having a casual catch-up after a brief separation. "Always knew you'd stick with that. Paying the bills, okay? Why are you here?" I finally managed to ask, the question coming out more bluntly than I had intended. There was an awkward pause before my mother jumped in with forced cheerfulness. "Can't family visit family? We've missed you, sweetie. And when we saw those posts about your new house, we just had to come see it for ourselves." After 3 years of no contact, I pressed. Another uncomfortable silence fell. Rebecca broke it by standing up and announcing she would help with lunch, proceeding to open my refrigerator without permission and begin cataloging its contents aloud. "You don't have much food for guests," she called from the kitchen. "Just some vegetables and yogurt. Don't you keep any snacks for the kids?" Michael cleared his throat. "Look, Olivia, we've had some financial setbacks recently." My father jumped in. "The market hasn't been kind to my investments. The retirement fund took a hit." He said this as if it explained everything about their sudden appearance. My mother reached for my hand, which I subtly moved away. "We've all been under so much stress lately. Michael's situation especially has been difficult." Michael looked uncomfortable but continued. "I lost my job about 6 months ago. The company downsized." The irony of this statement seemed completely lost on him. "We've been getting by on savings and Rebecca's part-time work, but we had to give notice on our apartment," Rebecca added, returning from the kitchen. "The landlord raised the rent again, and with Michael's job situation." Emma, who had been exploring the living room, piped up. "Daddy says we're going to live with Aunt Olivia now because she has extra rooms and no kids to fill them up." The adults exchanged glances, clearly not having planned for this revelation to come so abruptly or from a child. "We're not exactly planning to live here," my mother said quickly, shooting Emma a look. "We're just exploring options. Family should stick together during hard times. That's what family does." The pointed emphasis on her last sentence hung in the air between us, a reminder of how they had failed to follow their own principle when I had been the one in crisis. As if on cue, Jacob ran back into the room. Mom, there's a big empty room in the basement. Can that be my playroom instead? It's bigger." Rebecca smiled at me as if her son hadn't just laid claim to yet another part of my house. Kids, they get so excited about new spaces. "Emma, Jacob, why don't you go explore the backyard? I saw a nice tree out there." As the children ran out the back door, my father leaned forward. "Olivia, we should discuss the practical aspects of this arrangement. What are your property taxes like? Any HOA fees we should know about?" Arrangement. I repeated, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. Well, yes, my mother interjected smoothly. We're family. And that spare bedroom upstairs would be perfect for the kids. They're used to sharing. It was becoming increasingly clear that this was not just a visit. This was a scouting mission. A prelude to something much more presumptuous. I stood up abruptly. I need to make a phone call, I said, needing space to process what was happening. Make yourselves comfortable. But please, ask before going into any more rooms. As I stepped onto the front porch and closed the door behind me, I could hear Rebecca already discussing how she would rearrange my living room furniture to make it more family-friendly. Through the window, I saw my father opening cabinet doors in my kitchen, inspecting the hinges and fixtures as if conducting an appraisal. I took a deep breath of the spring air, now notably chillier than it had been during my peaceful morning routine that seemed to have occurred a lifetime ago. My family, the people who had left me to sleep in my car, had arrived unannounced on my doorstep with luggage and expectations. And somehow, I was the one who felt like an intruder in my own home. By late afternoon, it became clear that my family had no intention of leaving. My mother had commandeered my kitchen, critiquing my limited pantry while preparing a dinner I hadn't invited them to stay for. My father had discovered my thermostat and adjusted it to his preference, commenting on my wasteful energy settings. The children had tracked mud through the living room, and Rebecca had moved several of my decorative items to safer locations away from little hands. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Still on for dinner tonight? Looking forward to trying that new Italian place. I had completely forgotten our dinner plans. Quickly, I texted back, family situation. Can you come here instead? I need backup. His response was immediate. On my way. Need me to bring anything? Just your presence, I replied, feeling a wave of gratitude for his understanding. When Nathan arrived an hour later, the tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. I introduced him to everyone, watching as my mother's eyes lit up at the prospect of me having a boyfriend, while my father immediately began questioning him about his career and financial prospects. Banking, is it? Good, stable industry, my father said, giving Nathan a once-over. 401k matching? Homeowner. Nathan handled the interrogation with grace, answering politely while keeping a protective stance near me. When my mother announced that dinner was ready, we all awkwardly filed into my dining room, where she had set the table with my dishes arranged in a way I never would have chosen. The children were placed at the table with us, despite my dining set only having 6 chairs, meaning I had to retrieve a folding chair from the basement for myself. Rebecca spent the first 10 minutes of the meal taking photos of the food for her Instagram, while my father complained that the chicken was too dry. It was Michael who finally brought the true purpose of their visit into the open. As we were finishing the main course, he cleared his throat importantly. So, Olivia, we've actually given notice on our apartment, he announced, as if this were a perfectly normal dinner conversation. The landlord's giving us 2 weeks to vacate. I set down my fork. I'm sorry to hear that. Have you found a new place? An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother busied herself refilling water glasses that didn't need refilling. My father suddenly became very interested in the pattern on my dining plates. Well, that's the thing, Michael continued, exchanging glances with Rebecca. With the job market being what it is, and the rental prices in the city skyrocketing, we thought, well, we're family. And you have this big house all to yourself. Big is an overstatement, I replied carefully. It's 3 bedrooms, and 1 is my home office. The kids are used to sharing, Rebecca interjected quickly. And that office could easily be converted back to a bedroom. It's not like you need a dedicated workspace when the dining table is right here. My mother reached across to pat my hand. It would just be temporary, sweetie. 6 months, a year at most, until Michael finds something suitable. A year, I repeated, trying to keep my voice level. Well, we need to be realistic, my father said sternly. Good jobs don't grow on trees these days. Emma piped up from her seat. Daddy said we're gonna live here forever because Aunt Olivia has too much space for just one person. Michael shot his daughter a warning look. Not forever, Emma. Just until we get back on our feet. It was then that my parents dropped their own bombshell. Your mother and I have also had some adjustments to make, my father said, his tone suggesting this was all very reasonable. The market downturn hit our retirement fund hard. We've had to make some difficult decisions. My mother nodded solemnly. We've sold the house. You what? I couldn't hide my shock. They had owned that house for 30 years. Got a decent price, all things considered, my father continued, as if discussing the weather. But the closing is in 3 weeks, and the condo we're looking at won't be available for at least 6 months. The implications hung in the air like a storm cloud. My father cleared his throat. So we'll need somewhere to stay in the interim. Here, I stated rather than asked, finally understanding the full scope of their plan. Well, of course here, my mother said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Where else would we go? Hotels are expensive, and you have all this room. We thought you could take the basement, my father added helpfully. It's finished, has that small bathroom. You could make it quite cozy. You want me to move into my basement, I repeated slowly, so that you can have my bedroom. It makes the most sense, Rebecca chimed in. The master bedroom has the ensuite bathroom, which would be perfect for Richard and Diana. Michael and I could take the second bedroom, and the kids would have the third. The basement would give you privacy. Nathan, who had been silently observing this entire exchange, placed his hand over mine under the table, a small gesture of support that kept me from exploding. Plus, Michael added, delivering the line that would forever change our relationship, it's not like you even have a family of your own to worry about. No husband, no kids. Just you. We have actual responsibilities. A stunned silence fell over the table. Even my mother seemed to realize he had crossed a line. But Michael, oblivious or uncaring, continued. I mean, let's be realistic. You owe us, Olivia. We raised you, put you through college. Now it's your turn to help the family. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was my Aunt Margaret, my father's sister. Grateful for the interruption, I excused myself to answer it in the kitchen. Olivia, darling, Aunt Margaret exclaimed. I just wanted to call and thank you personally. Your father told me about your generous offer to take everyone in during these hard times. It's so wonderful to see family coming together like this. I gripped the counter for support. Did he now? Yes, he called everyone this morning. We're all so proud of you for stepping up. I told Cousin Jeffrey, and he said it restored his faith in the younger generation. Oh, we're planning a family reunion this summer. Now that everyone's in one place, it would be the perfect opportunity. Your house has a big backyard, right? I ended the call as politely as I could and returned to the dining room, where the conversation had moved on to which of my furniture pieces should be put in storage to make room for theirs. The sofa will have to go, Rebecca was saying. It's not really child-friendly, and our sectional is much more practical for family gatherings. My mother nodded. And that dining set only seats 6. We'll need something larger. We can bring our king bed, my father added. Much better than that queen you have upstairs. I stood in the doorway, watching this bizarre scene unfold in my home, these people who had abandoned me now planning to displace me from the life I had built without them. They were speaking about my home, the home I had purchased with money I earned through countless hours of hard work after they left me to sleep in my car, as if it were communal property. Michael noticed me standing there and smiled, misinterpreting my silence as acquiescence. Oh, and we'll need copies of your house keys. We're planning to start moving some things in tomorrow while you're at work. I felt Nathan's hand slip into mine, grounding me as the room seemed to spin. My family, the people who should have been my safety net, but instead had let me fall, were now assuming they could claim the life raft I had built for myself. And the most shocking part? They saw absolutely nothing wrong with this. In their minds, this was simply how family worked, taking what they needed when they needed it, regardless of past behavior or current boundaries. They expected me to give up my home, my privacy, my independence, everything I had fought so hard to rebuild, because family comes first. The same family that had told me not to contact them until I got my life together now wanted to move into the life I had created without them. The audacity was breathtaking. "I need some time to process all this," I said finally, my voice calmer than I felt. "It's getting late, and this is a lot to take in. Perhaps you should check into a hotel for tonight, and we can discuss it further tomorrow." My mother looked affronted. "A hotel? But we've been driving all day. We thought we'd stay here tonight." "I'm not prepared for overnight guests," I replied firmly. "I have an early meeting tomorrow, and I need my rest." After some protest, primarily from my parents about the unnecessary expense of a hotel, they finally agreed to leave. My father asked pointed questions about nearby affordable accommodations, making it clear he expected me to foot the bill. I recommended a reasonably priced hotel a few miles away, carefully avoiding any commitment to paying for it. As they gathered their things, though notably leaving 2 of their larger suitcases in my entryway, to save space in the car, Michael pulled me aside. "Think about it practically, Olivia. This arrangement makes sense for everyone. You have the space, we need it. That's what family does." I simply nodded, not trusting myself to speak without unleashing 3 years of pent-up rage and hurt. Nathan helped usher them out, his presence a steady support as they finally drove away, promising to return in the morning to continue the discussion. The moment their car disappeared down the street, I collapsed onto my couch, the full weight of what had just happened crashing down on me. Nathan sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "No," I admitted. "I'm not. Did that really just happen? Did my family really just show up after 3 years of silence and try to take over my house?" "They did," he confirmed. "And they seemed to think it was perfectly reasonable." I grabbed my phone and called Stephanie, my fingers shaking so badly I had to try twice to dial correctly. "Emergency," I said when she answered. "Can you come over?" "Family crisis." Within 30 minutes, both Stephanie and Marcus had arrived, responding to my SOS with the immediate support my biological family had never shown. I recounted the entire surreal day, from the morning doorbell to the dinner revelation. "They want you to move into your basement?" Stephanie repeated incredulously. "The basement of the house that you bought? So they can have the bedrooms?" Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "And they just assumed you'd say yes? After how they treated you?" "They did more than assume," I said bitterly. "They've already told the extended family that I've agreed to take everyone in." My aunt called to thank me. Nathan, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "You need to be prepared for them to show up tomorrow expecting to move in. Based on what I saw tonight, they're not going to take no for an answer easily." Stephanie nodded grimly. "You need a plan. And documentation. If they've already told people you've agreed to this, who knows what else they might claim." "I have a friend who's a financial advisor," Marcus offered. "She specializes in helping families through economic hardships. Maybe she could talk to your family about options that don't involve taking over your house." We stayed up late into the night, developing a strategy for handling the situation. Stephanie suggested I record all future conversations, legal in our state with one-party consent. Nathan researched tenant rights, concerned my family might try to establish residency if allowed to stay even briefly. Marcus called his financial advisor friend, who agreed to make herself available for consultation. As my support team finally left around midnight, with promises to remain on standby the next day, I found myself alone in the quiet of my home. I walked through each room slowly, touching the furniture I had carefully selected, looking at the photos of my chosen family on the walls, remembering the journey that had brought me here. I thought about the night I had spent in my car in a Walmart parking lot, crying silently so no one would notice someone was living in the vehicle. I remembered the humiliation of washing my hair in a gym sink, of changing clothes in public restrooms, of pretending to recruiters that I was calling from a home office rather than a library corner. I recalled each small victory: the first paycheck from Marcus, the tiny studio apartment, the promotion, the industry award, the mortgage approval. Each step had been a testament to my resilience, each achievement built entirely through my own efforts, without a single dollar or word of encouragement from the people who now expected to reap the benefits. Sleep eluded me that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, methodically documenting every detail of my family's abandonment 3 years ago. I found and printed old text messages, including Michael's final one telling me not to contact them until I got my life together. I wrote down verbatim the cruel things they had said at that last family dinner before cutting me off. By morning, I had made my decision. I texted my family to come over at noon for a discussion about arrangements. Their response was immediate and enthusiastic, with my mother adding that they would bring some measurements for furniture placement. I spent the morning preparing my home for the confrontation. I moved valuables and sentimental items to my bedroom and locked the door. I set up my laptop to record audio discreetly. I made a single pot of coffee but didn't prepare any food. This would not be a social visit. At 11:45, Nathan texted that he, Stephanie, and Marcus were parked down the street, ready to come in if needed. Their support gave me the final boost of courage I needed. When my family arrived at noon, they came with even more luggage than before, plus several boxes marked kitchen and bedding. They filed in with the confidence of people who believed the deal was already sealed, my father immediately directing Michael on where to put the boxes. Before we go any further, I said, my voice steady, I'd like everyone to sit down in the living room. We need to have an important conversation. They exchanged confused glances but complied, arranging themselves on my couch and chairs. Emma and Jacob were sent to play in the backyard, with Rebecca keeping watch through the window. I remained standing, drawing strength from the knowledge that my true family, the people who had actually supported me, were just a text away. 3 years ago, I lost my job during massive company layoffs. I had 3 months of savings, which quickly ran out as I searched for new employment in a saturated market. When I realized I was in serious financial trouble, I reached out to each of you for help. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father checked his watch. Dad, I continued, looking directly at him, when I called you, you said, and I quote, you should have saved better. Your generation always expects handouts. Then you hung up on me. His face reddened, but he didn't deny it. Mom, you offered thoughts and prayers, but suggested I cut back on fancy coffee drinks when I was already eating ramen noodles for every meal to save money. She looked down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. And Michael, I turned to my brother when I asked for help, you said. Maybe if you hadn't wasted money on that fancy apartment and designer clothes, you'd have something to fall back on. This despite the fact that I had loaned you $2,000 2 years earlier, money you never fully repaid. Michael started to protest, but I held up my hand, silencing him. When I came to dinner at your house, I continued, addressing my parents, to ask for a small loan to prevent my eviction. You made me feel like a failure. Rebecca called me an irresponsible millennial. Mom suggested I should find a husband to solve my problems. And Michael, you said something I will never forget. We have real responsibilities, real families to take care of. You only have yourself to worry about. I walked to the side table and picked up my phone, opening the text messages I had saved. The next day, Michael, you sent me this text. Don't contact us until you've got your life together. We can't keep bailing you out. It's embarrassing for everyone. Despite the fact that none of you had ever bailed me out of anything in my adult life. The room was dead silent now, the weight of their past cruelty hanging in the air between us. After that, I was evicted from my apartment. I lived in my car for 2 weeks, showering at a gym and using the library for internet access to apply for jobs. Not one of you checked to see if I was okay. Not one of you offered a couch to sleep on or even a meal. My mother's eyes had filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from genuine remorse or from being confronted with her actions. I rebuilt my life without any help from my family. I worked 2 jobs, often 70 hours a week. I took night classes to improve my skills. I saved every penny until I could afford this house. And now, after 3 years of silence, you show up on my doorstep expecting to move in? Expecting me to give up my bedroom and move into the basement of my own home. My father cleared his throat. The past is the past, Olivia. Family should forgive. No, I interrupted, my voice firm. You don't get to lecture me about what family should do. Family should have been there when I was sleeping in my car. Family should have offered me a place to stay when I had nowhere to go. You will not be moving into my home. The shock on their faces would have been comical if the situation weren't so painful. But where are we supposed to go? Michael asked, genuinely bewildered, as if it had never occurred to him that I might refuse. I've arranged for you to meet with a financial advisor, I said, handing him Marcus's friend's business card. She specializes in helping families through economic hardships and can discuss options like loan modifications, rental assistance programs, and employment resources. My father stood up, his face flushed with anger. This is how you treat your family? After all we've done for you? This is the most selfish thing I've ever witnessed. I met his gaze steadily. No, Dad. The most selfish thing I've ever witnessed was when my family abandoned me at my lowest point and then expected me to welcome them with open arms when they needed something from me. My mother was openly crying now. But we're family, she said, as if those words alone should erase everything that had happened. Family, I replied carefully, is more than blood. Family is who shows up when you need them most. And I've built a family of my own, people who support me, who value me, who would never leave me to sleep in my car and then expect to claim my home. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to reveal Nathan, Stephanie, and Marcus, right on time as planned. These are the people who helped me when you wouldn't, I said, as they filed in to stand beside me. The people who celebrated my successes instead of only showing up to benefit from them. They are my family now. Michael's face contorted with anger. You'll regret this. I'll make sure everyone in the extended family knows how you turned your back on us. Feel free to tell them everything, I replied calmly. Make sure you include the part where you abandoned me when I lost my job and how you expected me to give up my home to the same people who left me homeless. I walked to the entryway and picked up the house key I had spotted on my father's keyring earlier, the emergency key I had given my mother years ago. I'll need this back, I said, holding out my hand. After a moment's hesitation, my father removed it from his keyring and dropped it into my palm. Now, I concluded, I'd appreciate it if you would gather your things and leave my property. You're welcome to take the financial advisor's information, but your housing crisis is not my responsibility to solve. The next half hour was tense and awkward as they collected their boxes and suitcases, my father muttering about ungrateful children, while my mother alternated between tearful pleas and guilt-inducing sighs. Michael refused to speak to me at all, directing his children to the car with stony silence. Rebecca, perhaps the most pragmatic of the group, quietly took the financial advisor's card when the others weren't looking. As they finally drove away, Stephanie put her arm around my shoulders. You okay? I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I will be, I said. For the first time in a long time, I think I really will be. The girl they had abandoned needed them desperately. The woman I had become did not. The days following my family's departure were surprisingly turbulent. I had naively assumed that once I stood my ground, the matter would be settled. Instead, my phone became a battleground of emotional warfare. My father called repeatedly, his messages oscillating between anger, "You've made a huge mistake that you'll regret for the rest of your life," and clumsy attempts at negotiation. We could pay a small amount of rent after the first 6 months. My mother's approach was pure emotional manipulation, leaving tearful voicemails about how she couldn't sleep knowing her baby girl was so cold-hearted. Michael took to social media, posting vague but pointed comments about selfish siblings and the death of family values, carefully crafted to make me the villain without providing any context. But there were unexpected allies as well. My Aunt Martha, my mother's sister who had always been the family rebel, called me directly. "I heard what happened," she said without preamble. "Your mother is telling everyone you threw them out on the street after they came to you in their time of need." I braced myself for more criticism, but instead, Martha surprised me. "I told her she was full of it," she continued. "I remember how they treated you during your unemployment. I wanted to reach out then, but your mother insisted you wanted space to figure things out. I should have known better, and I'm sorry." That conversation was the first crack in the family narrative that I was the unreasonable one. Within days, my cousin Edward called too, offering a more balanced perspective. "Look, I'm not taking sides," he said carefully. "But I know there's more to the story than what Uncle Richard is telling everyone. If you ever want to grab coffee and talk, I'm around." These small gestures of understanding meant more than they could know. They were acknowledgments that my experience was valid, that the abandonment I had suffered wasn't something I had imagined or exaggerated. Meanwhile, the family members who had actually earned that title surrounded me with support. Nathan came over almost every evening, sometimes just to sit quietly with me as I processed the emotional aftermath. Stephanie brought over ridiculous comedies and ice cream, declaring mandatory laughter therapy. Marcus checked in daily, making sure the family drama wasn't affecting my work performance and assuring me I could take time off if needed. 2 weeks after the confrontation, we gathered at my house for what Stephanie dubbed a chosen family celebration dinner. As we sat around my dining table, the one my mother had deemed too small for real family gatherings, Nathan raised his glass in a toast. "To Olivia," he said, his eyes meeting mine with warmth and admiration. "Who taught me what real courage looks like." Standing up to family is harder than standing up to strangers, and you did it with grace and strength. Marcus nodded in agreement. "Which is exactly why I'm officially offering you a partnership position at Horizon. The company wouldn't be where it is today without your contributions, and it's time that was reflected in your title and compensation." I nearly choked on my wine. "A partnership? Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Marcus confirmed with a grin. "We can discuss the details on Monday, but I wanted to tell you now, surrounded by people who appreciate your value." Stephanie clapped her hands excitedly. "And with that increased income, I have a suggestion, a chosen family vacation. We all need a break, and I've been researching beach houses big enough for 4. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. My biological family had seen me as nothing more than a convenient solution to their problems, a resource to be used. My chosen family saw me as someone worth celebrating, worth investing in, worth building a future with. Over the next 3 months, I established careful boundaries with those family members I chose to maintain contact with. Aunt Martha and I began meeting monthly for lunch, building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Cousin Edward and I occasionally exchanged texts, keeping the connection casual but friendly. I allowed limited, structured contact with my parents, primarily to maintain a relationship with my niece and nephew, who were innocent in all of this. Michael remained steadfastly unrepentant, refusing any interaction that didn't begin with my apology and end with his family moving in. When I declined those terms, he declared me dead to him, a proclamation that hurt less than I expected. The brother who had abandoned me when I was at my lowest had shown his true character twice now. I didn't need a third demonstration. My sessions with my therapist took on new dimensions as we explored the cycles of family dysfunction that had led to this point. "Your family operated on a one-way support system," she observed during one particularly insightful session. "They expected you to give without limits, but felt no obligation to reciprocate. That's not a family relationship, that's exploitation." We talked extensively about the difference between forgiveness and boundaries. You can forgive someone for past behavior without allowing them to continue the same patterns, she explained. Forgiveness is about your peace of mind, not about giving them another opportunity to hurt you. These insights helped me process the lingering guilt I sometimes felt for turning my family away. The voice in my head that whispered, "But their family," grew fainter as I strengthened my understanding of what healthy family relationships should look like. With the emotional turmoil gradually settling, I turned my attention to my home, the symbol of my independence and resilience. I began redecorating in earnest, no longer constrained by the possibility of having to accommodate others' preferences. I painted the spare bedroom a bold teal color that my mother would have hated. I installed bookshelves along an entire wall of my living room, displaying my collection proudly rather than hiding it away as my father would have insisted. Every change, no matter how small, was an affirmation. This space is mine. I earned it. I deserve it. The ultimate act of reclamation came 3 months after the confrontation. I was updating my emergency contact information for a routine medical procedure when I realized all my official forms still listed Richard Richardson, father, as my emergency contact, the same man who had hung up on me when I called for help. Without hesitation, I crossed out his name and wrote instead, Nathan Taylor, Stephanie Chin, Marcus Johnson, listing all 3 with their contact information. The receptionist raised an eyebrow at the multiple names. "Usually people just put one person," she noted. "I'm lucky," I replied. "I have a whole family I can count on." As I drove home that day, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 3 years ago, I had been abandoned by the people who should have loved me most, left to rebuild my life from nothing. The pain of that betrayal had been nearly unbearable at the time, a wound so deep I thought it would never heal. But in that darkness, I had discovered a profound truth. Family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by love, by support, by showing up when it matters most. The people who had earned the right to be called my family weren't those who shared my DNA, but those who shared my values, who celebrated my successes, who held me up when I stumbled. My house, my home, stood as testament to that truth. It wasn't just walls and a roof. It was a physical manifestation of my resilience, my independence, and the new life I had built for myself. A life surrounded by people who truly deserved to be called family. The girl my biological family had abandoned needed them desperately. The woman I had become did not. And in that transformation lay the greatest victory of all. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your kindness? What helped you stay strong in the face of emotional manipulation? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's support each other through these challenging family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic conversations about family, boundaries, and personal growth. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message of empowerment, share this video with them. Remember, you deserve to be surrounded by people who value and respect you. Sometimes the family we choose is more powerful than the family we're born into. Thank you for being part of my journey, and I wish you strength and